What's up everybody, Brian Tong here, and this is my review for Apple's all-new M2 Max MacBook Pro. And if you're watching this, you're probably asking, what's new? How much faster is it? And is this a computer for me? And you know what? You're gonna get all of that. But now, just for some background and for some context, I own a fully loaded M1 Max MacBook Pro. And if you wanna know if Apple has outdone themselves, the quick answer is yes. Now, Apple sent me this fully loaded M2 Max MacBook Pro with the 12-core CPU, 38-core GPU with 98 gigs of unified memory. This is a beast, and the memory also opens up even larger workflows than projects that just weren't possible before on a MacBook Pro. Now, this is also a $6,499 machine before Apple Care and sales tax here in the US, but is just for this review, and I will sadly give it right back to Apple. Now, as a content creator, my current M1 Max MacBook Pro, that is the best laptop that I have ever owned. I can unequivocally say that. Compared to the M2 Max, my M1 Max has a 10-core CPU, 36-core GPU, and 64 gigs of memory, and an 8-terabyte hard drive. And its performance, it is already stupid fast. You know, its battery life pretty much gets me through the day, a full work day as well, and I've maybe heard the fan, I would say, 3 or 4 times in the past year that I've owned it. And one of those times was from doing these render tests that I use for my real world tests in these video reviews. Now, the M2 Max MacBook Pro, this is smart. And they say, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So just make it even faster and give it a longer battery life and update some of the connectivity, and voila. Now you see here, the design stays exactly the same from the refresh last year. You got that retro yet modern look, and yes, it is still thick with 5 Cs. You're getting Apple's Liquid Retina XDR display, which is their mini LED display with ProMotion at 120 Hertz. That also stays the same from last year. And then, yes, you will see the notch is still there too. But the majority of ports are all the same here. We got MagSafe, 2 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports, and a 3.5mm headphone jack on one side. And then on the other side, an SDXC card reader with 1 more USB-C Thunderbolt 4, and though a new updated HDMI 2.1 port that now brings support for one display with up to an 8K resolution at 60 Hz or a 4K at 240 Hz. And Pro users have been asking for a better HDMI port, and you know what? They got it. It also brings Wi-Fi 6E for faster wireless connectivity and Bluetooth 5.3. Those are 2 things that I had asked for last year, and they are here now. And even though, you know, I primarily use my M1 Max closed and connected to a display, we just can't forget how freaking good these speakers sound with support for spatial audio as well. It just sounds so good. Now, Apple claims with the new M2 Max, we're getting up to 20% faster CPU performance, 30% faster GPU performance. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, let's get ready to benchmark! I had to do that. Now, I've collected a lot of results using the same exact projects on different Apple hardware, but it can also really give us a great perspective of how these compare to other Apple hardwares, especially the M2 Max. So we're gonna do Geekbench benchmarks and then some real world tests. But let's first go through the Mac lineup, and you can see the specs for yourself for the Macs that we're testing. I have the M1 Mac Mini from 2020, the M2 MacBook Air from last year fully loaded. Then we have the new M2 Pro Mac Mini with the top-end processor, but 16 gigs of RAM and not 32, which is the max for that model. Then we have the M1 Max MacBook Pro fully loaded from 2021, the M1 Ultra Max Studio fully loaded, and this new M2 Max MacBook Pro fully loaded. And this is fun because we're also going to see at the high end of Apple's lineup how the M2 Max matches up with something like the M1 Ultra Max Studio. So let's start with the Geekbench 5 CPU performance results. And I run these things 10 times on each machine to get an average score to just eliminate any outliers. And if you look across the board, any Mac with an M2 chip has a faster single core score just based on the updated architecture. And for those wondering, the M2 Max single core score is about 13.5% faster than the M1 Max and M1 Ultra. Okay, let's now check out multi-score core performance. The M2 Pro and M2 Max hardware outperforms M1 hardware similarly with scores in the low 15,000s, but nothing is gonna top that beast that is the M1 Ultra and its 20-core CPU here. All right, now let's take a look at the Metal GPU performance scores. If you look at all of the lineup here, you could see clearly the standout king, the monster, the 64-core GPU of the M1 Ultra Max Studio. That is going to take the cake, but coming in behind it is the M2 Max MacBook Pro with its 38-core GPU. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now let's get to the real-world test, right? This is what matters to me as a content creator and a video editor. I run these render tests out 3 times in a row, and they're always resulting in differences, maybe just a few seconds off from each other. Sometimes it's the same, but I just do it to make sure. So let's start with this one. First, we're gonna go into Adobe Premiere, and it's a 13.5-minute unboxing video with 5 4K video tracks, 5 audio tracks. And the M1 Mac Mini will take the longest, but you see the time for the renders getting shorter. The M2 Pro is about 1.5 minutes faster. Then you got the M1 Max and M1 Ultra that had the same result at 4 minutes and 27 seconds. But the M2 Max chip took 16 seconds longer at 4 minutes and 43 seconds. Now, it's not a huge difference, but I would say it was a little bit of a surprise, and I thought it might be actually closer. It could also be due to the fact that Adobe not having their software fully optimized for the new chipsets. I mean, a similar thing happened with the M1 Ultra Max Studio, and a software upgrade, I think after a month later, performance then was significantly improved. But hey, that is what we have right now. And the reality is that most of you edit a video that is under 10 minutes anyway, so the time it takes to render out will be pretty close to each other. Either way, still very good performance, but honestly, I'm a little surprised there. So let's get a little chunkier now, okay? And export a 45-minute video in Premiere that has about 20 video and 20 audio tracks. And I know this isn't a common workflow, but hey, we're pushing it here. Now you can see here the big jump in shorter render times. It actually starts with the M2 Pro on the Mac Mini. And then at the top, you have the new M2 Max MacBook Pro with a render time right between the M1 Max and the M1 Ultra. And that's honestly the kind of result that I expected earlier, but you never know until you put these through the tests. Again, this is a long 45-minute project, which most of you will never do, okay? All right, now, let's get to Final Cut Pro results where the app is optimized specifically for the Mac hardware. Now, this is a 15-minute video. It's got 4 streams of 4K video on the project. All of these machines, other than the M1 Mac Mini, have Apple's media engine that is optimized to encode and decode ProRes video and supports multiple streams of 4K and 8K video. Now, the 2021 M1 Max was capable of handling 30 streams of 4K video in Final Cut Pro at one time, or 8 streams of 8K video at ProRes 422. So the entire media engine has now been optimized to now support, okay, hold on your butts for this, 43 streams of 4K video and 10 streams of 8K video in the ProRes 422 format. I saw demos with mixed 8K content with Red camera raw footage from a Canon R5C and HK RAW in a Final Cut project that didn't have a single hiccup, and it was doing, real-time effects and audio renders all in real time. It was stupid. It was stupid crazy, and that's just how powerful this machine is. So let's check out the results for the Final Cut Pro video export. This is, again, a 15.5-minute video project, 4 layers of 4K video, and I'm exporting in ProRes 422 high quality. And just look at these results. I'm just gonna let you say it for yourself. Holy this is redonkulous. The M2 Pro Mac Mini outperformed the MacBook Air, which is expected, but also outperforms the M1 Max MacBook Pro. Then you have the M2 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro, and it shows it can more than hang with the big boys and then some, with the best time out of any of them, 40 seconds for a ProRes 422 high-quality export in Final Cut Pro from a 15-minute project, even outperforming the M1 Ultra Max Studio. And this just illustrates how incredible these machines are at that top end and how incredible they still are at the entry level and the middle tier level. The new Apple Silicon just gets even crazier stupid for content creators here. But it also appears that Apple's M2 Pro and M2 Max media engine has really been fine-tuned and amped up and improved even more just based on these exports that even beat out the M1 Ultra Max Studio. I mean, it is really impressive. And just a reminder, I am, again, running each of these render tests 3 times to make sure, and the results were always within a few seconds of each other, sometimes the same exact time. So you look at all this, and how am I feeling right now, right? Like, I don't feel I'm totally missing out because my M1 Max MacBook Pro is still more than respectable. I invested over $6,000 in it, but Apple just made their silicon beast even beastier, and yeah, that qualifies as a word. So not only do you get this incredible power, it's efficient at the same time, and that's what Apple has been focused with their approach to Apple Silicon. You're getting the same performance, whether you run tasks on battery or plugged into power, you're gonna get the same result. You do have the option in the battery settings in the energy mode section to select between low power mode, and that reduces energy usage and operates more quietly, or you can switch over to high power mode that supports resource heavy tasks and may result in a louder fan. By default, it's on automatic, and this can be changed separately for whether you're doing battery usage versus on power adapter usage. Apple was then like, okay, hey, why don't we just like show off a little bit and manage to get an extra hour of battery juice out of the new M2 Max and MacBook Pros. So for the 16-inch, it's now rated at 22 hours of video playback, which is 1 hour more than the M1 Max 16-inch. And the 14-inch now gets 18 hours versus the 17 hours on the M1 Max 14-inch last year. Like, I could still get through a solid workday without recharging. And let's not forget how quiet this laptop is. In fact, you can't even call this MacBook Pro quiet anymore because it doesn't make a sound. It is incredible. It's crazy. Okay, so who is this really for, right? Well, surprise, the M2 Max MacBook Pro is not the computer for everyone. You know what? Apple knows this too. I mean, if you're still in an Intel machine and you're a creative professional, like now is the time to jump over. That's a no-brainer. It's gonna change your life, and I don't really care what Apple chip you get, really just make the jump already now. The reality is that this is a top-tier desktop class performance on a laptop, and right now, for my workflow, I'm more than happy with sticking with my fully loaded M1 Max MacBook Pro while still being absolutely impressed by the new M2 Max MacBook Pro. I mean, this new machine is now taking those kind of 1%er Apple users with professional work at that highest level, another level up with this M2 Max. So let's say you're the 10 streams of 8K video person, or the 3D effects guru with a 64 gig project that needs real-time rendering. I'm talking to you for this machine. And if I ever decide it's time to start working with 8K content regularly, then obviously I'd absolutely make the jump up, but that's just how high they are pushing with this machine. So I'd say this M2 Max MacBook Pro is for creatives who haven't made the jump yet to Apple Silicon. If you want to save some money, even the M2 Pro, that's gonna blow you away easily. There's also the creatives at that highest end of the spectrum that need the fastest thing. This is for them. And then let's not forget our favorite rich people who just like buying the most expensive thing because they can. This is also for you. Now, Apple's at the point now where their computing power is just so good that for the general consumer who's doing word processing, email, web surfing, maybe some videos and some light video work, if you're in the market to upgrade right now, I'd recommend at least starting with an M2 machine today. That still has Apple's media engine, and then you could kind of work yourself up there from there depending on your needs. But we're just a little over 2 years with Apple Silicon on the Mac, and there's still a whole lot more room to grow, whether we need it or not. And even if I don't upgrade, they just made the best computer that I have ever owned even better. So the M2 Max MacBook Pro, that's a good Apple.